Hi, welcome to my channel. I am Cheryl, and today we're going to be discussing what I took away from Stephen King's book on writing. Before we get started, I do want to let you know that my channel is about becoming a better writer, and I do lots of research and I share information with you, and we read books together and evaluate them based on what we learned in prior weeks. So if that sounds interesting to you, then please do subscribe. Make sure you hit that little bell notification so that you actually get my video feed. And let's go on this journey together. Okay guys, so Stephen King on writing. Wow, it was a really good book, and I did read it a while ago, so I am going off memory. I wasn't about to reread the whole thing, but I did skim through my highlighted parts in preparation for this video. But what I do want to let you know is that if you are interested in becoming a writer, the book is very inspirational. Yeah, he almost makes you feel like you can do it. So, absolutely. I would probably say this is probably, well, from what I've studied so far, the number one thing that you should get as far as being motivated, being inspired, and learning the process of writing, because he goes through his writing process, what he does every day, goes over the tips of, hey, you need to read, and that's kind of why I joined BookTube, to get some ideas on books to read, because, he's absolutely right. I feel like my knowledge of writing has gotten better since I've started this channel. Let me tell you a little bit about my experience with Stephen King. Oops. My experience with Stephen King, I've tried reading 2 novels of his, and the first one was just so wordy, I wanted to vomit and throw it out. I think I read up to chapter 2, and I got rid of it. And then the second novel, Rose Madder, the first one was a long time ago, I don't remember what it was, but I read Rose Madder, and his descriptive in that was good. I mean, he's Stephen King, come on, I have no place to evaluate him, but I'm just talking from a reader's experience. He sucked me into the story, I liked his characters, but then we got halfway through and he started getting weird, and I don't know where that story was supposed to go, but I ended up putting that one down. So what I do remember from that book was that his descriptions were really good. And obviously if he's wordy in the other books, then, well, he's very descriptive. So I decided, we're going to be reading Stephen King's It, and I'm going to evaluate a reader's review on that next week, and then the following week we're going to evaluate description. And that's kind of like the chunk of what we're going to be talking about today. But before I get to that, he did go over something that I found very helpful, and that was to make sure you use an active verb. And I'm just going to read what I wrote here. It says the subject of the sentence is doing something. A passive verb, that's an active verb, where the subject of your sentence is doing something. And a passive verb is when something is being done to the subject of the sentence. Obviously, the active verb is more engaging, so he stresses that when you're writing, you should be writing with active verbs. There's an example here. I don't know if it was an example from his book or if I made it up. We'll say it's his. I don't know. But an example is, the body was carried, it's his. The body was carried from the kitchen and placed on the parlor sofa. And that sounds like a normal sentence that, people would write while they're writing stories. But he says the subject is being carried. It's not doing something, the subject being the body. So instead, he says, name who carried the body and make them do the work. That way, whoever's carrying the body is the subject, and they're doing something, and it's more engaging. And I thought that was that was a very good key point that I took away from the book, and I felt it was important to share, so I did. Now I have a crap load of stuff that I wrote down here for description. So, let's read, shall we? Point 1 Stephen King makes on description. he says, like I said earlier, you need to read, and read more, and read until you understand how much is too little and how much is too much. And I guess that kind of goes back to what I was saying, how I thought he was too wordy in the one book. I'm obviously there are millions of people who love his wordy works. But me personally, I don't. So maybe it's not a good idea that I use Stephen King's It to kind of figure out description. But hey, that's what we're going to do. If you do a lot of reading, you can figure out what's right for you, what you like, and therefore you can do it. So thin description leaves the reader feeling bewildered and nearsighted, and over description buries him or her in details and images. Let the reader supply the faces and the clothing. And I like this, how he explains this. So he gives an example of a girl that he calls Carrie White, and he says that she's a high school outcast with a bad complexion and a fashion victim wardrobe. And he says that from that, we've all experienced someone like that in high school. Maybe we were that person. Was I that person? My complexion was just fine in high school. Anyway, but yeah, we all know that person from high school. So I would assume, like I did, you automatically have her in your mind. So he says, this is good enough for the reader to piece it together. Description begins in the writer's imagination, but should finish in the reader's. That's brilliant. Yes, that. Because I don't know if it's in here or not, but I don't remember if I read it in his book or not. But it doesn't matter how much a writer explains a scene or clothing or anything like that. The reader's still going to have a different image in their mind. Nobody sees it the same way. I don't care how many words are on there. No one's going to see it the same way, which is kind of sad, since when I'm writing, I have something I want people to see, and now they're not really going to see it, are they? They'll get the gist of it, though. They'll get the gist of it, just like we got the gist of the chick. All right, so he says to choose some good details, but let the reader fill in the rest and keep the ball rolling. Use a well-written simile, but avoid cliches like ran like a madman, fight like a tiger, pretty as a summer day. When you're describing, use your senses whenever possible. Describing location, scenery is more important than the character description, but still leave some things out. It's about the story in the end, not the location. So he gives an example of a bar scene, and he says, in describing a bar scene, he writes, after the hot clarity of 2nd Avenue, Palm 2 was as dark as a cave. The back bar mirror picked up some of the street glare and glimmered in the gloom like a mirage. I like that. And then he also points out a few people at the bar, the maitre d' whose tie is undone and shirt cuffs rolled back to show his hairy wrists, sawdust on the floor, and then he goes on and on and on and on and on and on, and that's where it's too much description for me, but just right for him, and apparently lots of other people who like to read him. But yeah, I stopped writing down because I was good with just the mirror and the glare, and I kind of set the scene, and then maybe one or two people description to let me know what's going on is good for me. He is very descriptive, which is why I thought he would be a good one to learn from. So that is what I took away from his book. Well, like I said, I took a lot away from his book. That was heavy. I took a lot away from his book, but that's what I wanted to take away, at least for this video, was the description part. So I am going to put a clip of Stephen King at the end. Let me know if you're a Stephen King fan. Let me know what your favorite Stephen King story is. And if you are not, let me know what story turned you off. If you are interested in joining in 2 weeks and reviewing with me Stephen King's It, then pick up that novel. And we'll be going through some of the descriptive sentences and paragraphs just to kind of get a better understanding of how he does description. You don't need to read it all the way through to join in 2 weeks because it's just description. It doesn't have anything to do with the story. It's just kind of pulling out some of my favorite descriptive lines and sharing them with you guys. So if you're going to read it, just pull out some of your favorite lines and share them with me below in 2 weeks, not here. Don't do it here. And I will see you guys hopefully next week. I'll be doing a reader's review of Stephen King's It. And yeah, that should be interesting since, you know, I'm not a fan of his writing so far. So yeah, I'll see you next week. If not, I'll see you in 2 weeks for the writing session. See you then. Bye.